Alright guys, so in this video we're checking out two new chargers from ToolkitRC. Got the M4 here on the right and the M4Q on the left. And as you guys know, I switched over to using the M6D as sort of my daily charger. This is what I use pretty much all the time now. It's got two channels, and I did a review on this already, so if you want to see information about this or a video, I'll put a link in the description to that review. Now, the interface and everything, as you can see, is going to be almost identical to the M6D. You've got the scroll wheel and the button here, but instead of two channels on this charger here, the M6D, and the M4Q, we've got four channels now. However, with one major difference, it doesn't charge up to 6S, it only charges up to 4S on the balance lead here. So some of you guys are going to be pretty disappointed in that, but I'm kind of glad that ToolkitRC is making our chargers that are a little bit different. I don't think that chargers or anything FPV related should be one size fits all, and this is obviously going to be great for certain pilots that don't fly 5 or 6S batteries. I mostly fly 4S batteries still. And by the way, the M4 here is just the one channel version of the M4Q. Same deal here, up to 4S batteries. We'll talk about this one here in a little bit. It's very nice and light. Now, as you can see, this has XT60 connectors here. However, there is an XT30 connector version, so if you would rather have XT30 connectors here instead of having to use an adapter, which I'm going to have to do, since most of my micro batteries that are 4S or 3S, which is what I mostly fly for micros, they all have XT30s, and I would have rather have gotten the XT30 version. Maybe they'll send me the XT30 version because I have to use an adapter, XT60 to XT30 adapter, to charge up those XT30 LiPos. But obviously the XT30 version is available if you want it. And let's just take a quick look around the rest of the charger here. We have it plugged in already. Not a whole lot going on the sides, but here's the back. And we got the AC plug-in over here. So this is different from the M6D. This one is basically DC power only, up to 28 volts, as you can see on the M6D, no AC power. And here for AC power, we have 100 to 240 volts. We say switchable, got a nice big fan there. And the DC input is 10 to 18 volts only. You got a micro USB port there for firmware updates, and it does include the micro USB cable if you want to do firmware updates. And of course the cable here for plugging into the wall for your AC power. Now, as typical for most chargers that do AC and DC, you're going to have a higher wattage on DC versus AC. So you can see here it's AC 100 watts total over 4 channels when you're on AC power, but when you're on DC power, you get 50 watts times 4 channels, so a maximum of 200 watts on the, if you are powered off of a DC, the DC power supply, for example. So if you have a bigger power supply, if you want, for charging at home, that can provide more wattage, then you can go up to 200 watts on the DC side versus the internal AC power that's on this particular charger. Okay, so just to give you all the details on the specs here, as I mentioned here before, 100 watts on AC, 200 watts on DC. These are the different battery types. These look like all the same as before. Things changed there. And then the IPS display is a 3.5 inch 480 by 320 pixel IPS display. So you can see here we have 4 channels now, and the active channel is going to be highlighted here with a solid number versus the inactive channels are going to be numbered basically with the empty white background. So if you want to switch channels, you just press the channel button here. So we go to 2, so 2 turns solid blue. Yeah, solid green for channel 3 and solid purple for channel 4. So you have yellow, blue, green, and purple for the 4 different channels. Let's do a quick charge demo here. So this is a 4S LiPo. Okay, getting in the balance plug is a little bit challenging. With the negative here towards the XT60 plug. Make sure that channel 1 is active, and we'll just long press the scroll wheel. It brings up the battery selection. This is actually off by default. But I went ahead and turned that on because I normally like to have different options here for the battery selection. You can watch the M6D video. Basically, you can go in here and change different parameters, and then it'll save that as a preset here. So you can actually create different presets here. This is why I like actually having this enabled. I'll show you how to enable that here in a second. But basically, we have LiPo here, 1 amp for the charge. We'll go in here. You have mode here, so charge and storage charge are the only options. And end voltage of 4.2 volts. Cell selection is auto. And then here you can actually change the active channel if you want. So if you know the battery's on a different channel, you can do that. Or just go straight to start because we know it's running on channel 1. Charge to 16.8 volts. Hit OK. And you can see that the channel 1 starts becoming active. And it should increase the amperage up to 1 amps here. And then we can see over here, we have our voltages and our internal resistance numbers here. Those should be coming in pretty soon. Charge time, you see the total voltage, amps, watt hours. So obviously you can go through and plug in 3 additional batteries and start charging up on each channel. So this is great for me because I tend to charge up a lot of micro batteries. I actually have 2 of these M6Ds, so this will be kind of convenient, save a little bit of space. And for me, I don't use or recommend using parallel chargers. You can use a parallel charger in each one of these channels if you want to charge up a bunch of batteries, but I've pretty much thrown away all my parallel chargers because you have to be very careful in how you use them and make sure that all of the batteries you're plugging in are of the same voltage level and very close together, which is a pain in the ass because a lot of times they're not necessarily within 0.1 volts of each other. They're often, off a little bit here and there. And what's really bad is that if one of the cells of, say you have a parallel board, you have 6 batteries in there, say they're all like, say, 3-cell batteries, right? Say one of the cells of one of the 3-cell batteries is like damaged or not charging for whatever reason, it will sit there and start pumping in current into all the cells of all the batteries, thinking that something is it's not charging. But what happens is that dead cell that's not taking charge is preventing or basically allowing the other cells to become overcharged. So you end up destroying a lot of batteries that way. So that's why I stopped using parallel charges, because something always goes wrong and you end up destroying, basically one battery ends up destroying like 3 or 4 batteries when you start using parallel charges. So I definitely recommend don't use those anymore. Something like this with 4 channels is going to be more useful and safer because each of the channels are independent. All right, so we'll go ahead and stop this. I'm going to charge up this battery later. And it's going to show you the interface here, the system interface. So long press the scroll wheel. This brings up the setup here, and where I turn on the battery selection is right here. You can turn that on or off. So if you turn that off, and then exit out of here, if you want to start a charge, so if you want to start a charge, you have to basically change each of these settings one at a time. So if, for example, you're switching from a LiPo battery to a different battery, or for whatever reason, like some of these settings aren't going to be the same all the time for you, if you're switching them around a lot, then you have to actually do it every time you charge. It's nice. I think it's nicer to have that battery selection interface, so you can have different types. So like if you're charging LiPo batteries and lithium-ion batteries, for example, then you can have different presets for that. All right, so let's take a look at the single channel version here. So, AC only for this one. And we'll just look at the specs real quick here. It's max of 30 watts and 2.5 amps. So it's a pretty low spec charger, but it's only going to be charging one battery at a time. It's actually pretty tiny and light. So I personally don't find this to be all that useful, but if you don't have a lot of batteries and you just want something smaller and cheaper, this is probably a good way to go. But again, XT60 on this one. I don't know if an XT30 version is available for this one or not. And again, you have just a 4-cell balance lead here. And you only have a single button here to operate. So let's see here what happens. Yeah, so you just press the button and it just starts charging. So it must auto detect the battery, or maybe you can long press. Let's see here. So if I short press the button again, maybe I'll stop it. Yeah. If I long press it, so I don't know how you can. Oh, I see here. I see what's going on. Okay, so the way to change what it's doing here, you can see that the 3.6 volts here is highlighted. So basically, you long press, and it switches to the different types here. So you can do 4.2 volts, 4.35 volts, 3.85 volts, or 3.6 volts. So I think it's charging 4.2 volts as a standard LiPo, 4.35 volts is for high volts, and then you have 3.85 for storage charging, and I think 3.6 is probably for like discharge. So if we go to long press again, it goes to standby, and then starts charging again. So I think it just starts charging automatically. And then if it's selected to 4.35, so if I change this to 3.85, it's going to start charging because each of the cells is less than 3.85 volts. So here we're about 3.7 volts. If I change it to 3.6 volts, it ought to start discharging. Now it still says charging up there, but I think it's going to actually take the voltages down. Yeah, it's actually going down now. But it still says charging up there. Change it back to 4.2 volts. Basically, to change to the different 4 settings here, you long press, and then it goes and it starts charging. And so if I short press the button, it should go back into standby mode. Yeah. And then it starts charging again. So I think it just charges when you plug it in. So let me unplug this. And you should be able to change these while it's unplugged. Long press. Yeah. Okay, it's fairly intuitive. And then if we just plug this in, let's see what happens without plugging in the balance charger or the balance lead. So nothing's happening yet. We'll plug in the balance lead. And we can see our voltages here. So yeah, once you plug in the balance lead, then it starts the charge cycle, or charge process. And it shows you your voltage, your amps going in there. So it doesn't look like you can adjust the amps or anything like that. It's just, I think, whatever. Let me see what the instructions say. Okay, so now I figured out something else. If you short press the button, it'll go from half an amp, which is that green dot here. It was over here on the far left. Now it's here in the second position. It's at 1 amp. You press it again. It goes in the standby mode, and then it starts charging again, and then it goes to the third setting here at 2 amps. And you press it again. It stops, and then it starts again, and it adjusts the charge up to 2.5 amps. So short pressing adjusts the current, and long pressing adjusts the voltage. So yeah, I read the instructions, but I guess it didn't quite click to me as to what that meant until I actually figured out this interface here, because it's a little bit confusing as to what is said in the instructions. So that's basically what it is. So basically, short pressing adjusts the current, and long pressing adjusts the type of charge process that you want to do, either a normal LiPo, high volt storage, or I guess I'm not exactly sure what 3.6 volts is. Lower than storage voltage, whatever that is. I don't think I'd ever use that, but yeah. So those are the 4 different charge modes, and then you can adjust the current by just short pressing the button like that, and I'll adjust it back down to half an amp. And to just stop it, you just unplug it, and it just stops. So yeah, it's pretty simple. And I mean, obviously, the chargers from ToolkitRC work pretty well for me. So I'm not exactly sure what I'd use this one for, but I don't know. I may end up giving it away at some point. Anyway, so that's gonna do it for this video. For these 2 guys, let me know if you have any questions about these. Check out the M6D video link it down in the description for this. This is a very good charger as well if you're looking to do, and I think this one goes up to 6S, as you can see here. So if you're looking for 6S, this one's definitely pretty good. So check out that video.